The total residential price for a home here in Calgary is $603,000. We have finally broken the $600,000 price point, which was anticipated for 2024, just not this quick. And there's no slowing down in sight. When you look at these sales, we've actually surpassed 2023. We've surpassed 2021, but I don't think we're gonna hit 2022 sales numbers anytime soon. My name's Adam Fyfe, your Calgary Realtor. If you're looking at getting into the market, a buy, a sell, or an invest, it is so important to go in with a game plan and have a conversation before you step in. It is very crazy out there, and getting information well in advance is so important. So go ahead, book a Zoom call. The link is in the description. If you want to know what your home is valued at, and you're just curious of what is actually increased in your local community, you can actually go ahead and put your home address. The link is in the description for an instant home evaluation. You'll get an email within seconds. So let's get into this. I'm going to read this verbatim. And now if you want to read it on your own, that's totally fine. Pause the video, give this a read, and skip to the next chapter. I won't be offended. Price growth persists in Calgary as sellers market prevails. Sales in April rose by 7% compared to last year to 2,881 units. While the pace of growth did ease compared to earlier in the year, sales remained 37% higher than long-term trends for the month. Much of the growth in sales has occurred for relatively more affordable, higher density product. At the same time, there were 3,491 new listings in April, 11% gain over last year, but only 3% higher than long-term trends. The rise in new listings compared to sales prevented any further deterioration of inventory situation. However, with 2,711 units in inventory, levels are 16% below last year and half of what is traditionally seen in April. While supply levels are still declining, much of the decline has been driven by lower priced homes. Homes priced below $500,000 have reported a 29% decline. Meanwhile, we are seeing supply growth in homes above $700,000. Persistently high interest rates are driving demand toward more affordable products in the market, and at the same time driving listing growth for higher priced properties. With a sales to new listing ratio of 83% and a months of supply of less than 1 month, conditions continue to favor the seller, driving further price gains in the market. In April, the unadjusted total residential price reached $603,000, 1% gain over last month and nearly 10% higher than last year's levels. Now, this is really important to understand. We're seeing a lot of activity in that affordable market, right? Under $500,000. But anything over $700,000 is a little bit more relaxed, a little bit less competition, and you might have a little bit more selection to choose from. So when you're getting into the market, it's very important not to just read the tabloids and the headlines, but actually diving in and figuring out what is the market that you're getting into doing. So let's touch on this graph real quick, and I just want to highlight this super fast. It actually has changed last month. The Calgary Real Estate Board has decided to drop the price point. So if you actually look at this graph here and then this graph here, you can see there's a difference. So touching on this, you can see that the price point has now reached $603,000, which is pretty gnarly. If you look at the ceiling that was placed last year from August to about January, we hit around a $570,000 price point, and we basically just stayed there. As soon as February numbers came in, boom, we went up, and we saw 2 rapid months of increases for the total residential price point. You can see that, yes, there was still an increase. It wasn't as dramatic as from February to March, but we're still seeing increases nonetheless. This is also the second month that we saw sales outpace inventory, which is pretty crazy, an indicator that we're probably going to see a pretty intense market and inventory levels fall unless we see more new listings come to the market. The sales have actually almost reached our May-June highs of last year, and our inventory is lower than all months reported from April to November last year. So when we start to break this down for April, you can see that the total sales by price range, the 700 to a million, is the biggest column. But when you break that down into the 700, 800, 900, they're all going to be quite low. You look at the 300s and the 400s, the 500s, 600s, they're all relatively the same at 400 sales for that month. Now, when you look at the sales by property type, this is interesting. You can see that the most amount of sales was in city center. And you can see that the most amount of sales were apartments in city center at 400. You can see that followed by 271 detached sales in South Calgary and 206 detached sales in Northeast. So kind of a cool concept there to look at. Now, when we start to look at the share of citywide sales, you can see that in the apartment sector, 48% was in city center. When you look at the semi-detached sector, you can see that 30% was in the city center. When you look at the townhouse sector, 19% was the highest in south, and then another 21% detached in the south. So I'm going to touch on this every single month. I actually kind of like this chart. It kind of really just showcases where a lot of the movement is. I would imagine city center is going to see the most amount of activity just because it's the largest quadrant with the most amount of product, but nonetheless, it's kind of cool. When you start to look at the total inventory, this also paints a good picture, which was talked about in that written description. You can see that the 700,000 plus, it has a lot of the inventory, right? You've got over, if you put the two together, you probably have 1,100 units in inventory. You can see that anything under $200,000 is basically gone. There's maybe like 20 to 30 apartments left in Calgary, and who knows what they look like. The $200,000 price point is pretty low, and then going from there. Now, we need new listings. We've talked about this before. We need new listings. You can see that the new listings has increased from last year, which is great. You can see that the year-to-date increase is evident from last year, but we're just not at the levels we need to be at to offset the amount of demand. You can see that 2022, 2021, we saw a pretty large uptick in new listings, because that's when people started realizing, whoa, this market is starting to shift. We want to get out of the product from all of the declines that we've seen over the last 5 years from 2015 to 2020. So kind of an interesting story there. I don't think we're going to see 2022 sales or new listings for quite some time. Now, let's start to break this down into quadrants. Now, this is kind of cool. This is total residential benchmark price for each individual quadrant. So all property types morphed into one. The most affordable quadrant being East Calgary, $441,000, up 23%. Now, a lot of people that move here saw those prices in East Calgary and they flocked there and they said, oh, this is great. These are very affordable compared to other areas of the city. So they end up buying investment properties. They end up buying their first time home buyer property, whatever. And then you look at the more expensive quadrant of West is 721, with still almost 10% increase from last year. So even though it is the most expensive quadrant in the city, it's still seeing almost double-digit price growth considering these higher interest rate environments. It's pretty crazy stuff. Everything else is seeing double-digit price growth, minus city center. City center is always a little bit lower than everyone else, but we're still seeing a 4% increase for the entire city there. So let's look at the market as a whole. This is quite fascinating. This is just the general real estate market as a whole. So you can see the total sales is up from 2023 by 16% to over 9,000 sales. The total sales volume is pretty gnarly. Last year we only had 4.2 billion. This year we have 5.5 billion, a 30% increase. So the increase in sales price and the increase in sales volume is really evident on that over $1.3 billion volume from the same time last year. New listings have increased, which is really great to see. We're up almost 8%. Inventory is down. Obviously, it's pretty self-evident. Months of supply is down. This is a year-to-date average. Months of supply is down. Sales to new listing average is about 81%, meaning that about 81% of the new listings are selling. Sales to new list price is 101.29%, meaning that the majority of listings that are going on the market are selling above asking price. The average days on market year-to-date is 24, and then we're just going to ignore these price points because we're going to touch on them in a moment here. So this is the breakdown for each individual property type. Now you can see the total residential, $603,000, which is up 10% from last year. If you look at the chart here, you can see we saw a little dip there, but we're right back on track to this pretty massive growth that Calgary's seeing. It's up $6,100 from last month, up almost $53,000 from last year. Single family homes is at $750,000, which is pretty crazy, up $9,300 from last month. You can see that semi-detached are at 668, up $10,000 from last month. Rows 458, up almost $10,000, and then apartments also up $8,500 to $346,000. So pretty crazy stuff here. Like this whole market really has no slowing down in sight. So when we start to break this down, this is kind of a cool year-to-date average for individual property types. So you can see some of the different numbers here. We're not really going to touch on this a whole lot. Total residential. At the bottom here, you can see that the sales are up, the new listings are up, the inventory is down, sales to new listing ratio, everything's hovering around that 80%. The months of supply, everything's hovering around that 1%. Townhouses are at 0.8, which is pretty crazy. Very aggressive market as a whole for townhouses. And then the actual benchmark prices, again, the year-to-date average for those benchmark prices, a little bit of a slower growth than the month benchmark price, but you can see a lot of growth there. So if you want to read what the Calgary Real Estate Board has written about each individual property type, go ahead and pause the video, give this a read. If you are looking at getting into the market, I promise I'm easy to talk to, and it's very important to book a Zoom call. The link is in the description. But for those of you who want to know what your home evaluation is, maybe you don't want to reach out to a realtor, maybe you want to do this once a quarter on your own, once a month on your own, go ahead and put your property address in this and it'll email you instantly a home evaluation. It's pretty slick, and I'm actually very impressed with some of the numbers that it does provide. It is an instant home evaluation tool. It's me and only me that looks at it, and I thank every single person that has trusted me with that information and just trying to provide you with value. So let's continue on here. Now, this is a months of supply. So if you're a buyer looking at getting into the market, and let's say you're looking for a townhouse in a certain quadrant, this will tell you which quadrants are a little bit slower and which quadrants are a little bit busier. So again, just townhouse market as an example, you can see that North Calgary is at 0.4, where West Calgary has almost 1 month of supply. Now, both markets, very tight. You can see anything under 1 month of supply is a very tight market. Now, kind of changing gears here, you can see that city center and detached apartments and semi-detached are all above 1 month of supply. Now, it's still a seller's market in those quadrants, but it might be a little bit of a slower market compared to other quadrants. You have to put into consideration the benchmark prices of city center, but it's a little bit of a slower market compared to those others. So facts are very important to know. Now, this is the microeconomic breakdown for the entire city. And I'm not going to touch on it too much because that's what the individual property type videos are for, which I'll record and upload over the next week. But a couple of things to highlight here. We're still seeing above 100% for sales to new listing ratios. I mean, you've got your single family homes in East, you've got your apartments in North, you've got your semi-detached in West, and you've got your row townhouse in North as well, all seeing more sales than they were new listings, depleting their inventory or their leftover homes at the end of the month. So you can see the months of supply, everything is again super hot sellers market. A lot of homes are under 1 month of supply, which is pretty crazy. Benchmark price, year-over-year growth, month-over-month growth, and I'll reveal this now for the actual dollar value of what has happened over the last month. And pretty crazy to see, actually. We are semi-detached homes in North Calgary actually saw a decrease of $1,200. Now, $1,200 on $522,000 is virtually nothing. It's more of a flat line, but it's still crazy to see, right? Last month on the far right, you can see that every single property type increased, even the semi-detached homes. The semi-detached homes last month saw a almost $12,000 increase month over month. So they've kind of just flattened out a little bit. No cause of stress there. But if you start to look at the last month versus this month, you could look at like single family homes in city center as an example. $34,000 increase month over month last month. $14,000 increase this month. Last month, Northwest single family homes, 11,000, and then another 11,000. You start to look at the apartments, just an example. You got the Northeast saw a $10,000 increase last month, $8,000 this month. Going down to semis, you can see $22,000 increase in West, another $9,000 increase this month as well. So we're seeing a lot of those increases all across the city. So where's the Calgary real estate market going? Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I would imagine we're going to continue to see double-digit price growth all throughout the year. This chart here just showcases the year-over-year percentage change. So when you start to look at this, the red line here is what I'm focusing on. You can see that it's been double-digit price growth for the last, let's just say, 5-6 months, which is here. And I would imagine we're going to continue to see more or less pretty close to double-digit price growth in 2024. This chart just showcases Calgary's benchmark prices. Yes, we have had times of slowing down. You can see that in late of 2021, we flatlined. In 2022, we did decrease because of the interest rate increases at that time. 2023, we did hit a ceiling as well. And 2024, we're just continuing to increase. So although the real estate market in Calgary has had times of slowing down, we're consistently prevailing or persisting past those slowdowns. And I don't think we're going to see price decreases anytime soon. So if you're looking at getting in the market, like I mentioned, reach out. Thank you very much for everyone who has watched this video to the end. Comment I made it, comment your questions. Let me know if you want me to dive into like more economics side of things, because the Canadian economic overview is like really interesting, especially when you compare it to Calgary. Like Calgary is seeing some wild increases in price point because we're so affordable. And then you look at other cities in other cities in Canada, and you're seeing flat lines and decreases. So maybe I should start making a video about what's going on in maybe other metropolitan cities, what's going on with our economic stance as a whole in Canada, where Canada is going, and how it's maybe affecting Calgary. So if you'd like to see that, let me know. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next video. Peace.